Hey everyone. Yeah, let's try this again, hopefully without any interruption. Um, but I thought I'd kind of give more of not a long response, hopefully not so long, but more of a response reply to the six-part video that I did where I was reading off FoxAffliction's theory analysis rant, which they entitled Two Sides of a Story, basically talking about the whole Fiona Fox betrayal back in the Archie Sonic comics, and how in a way it just the pieces just didn't really fit together very well, and how this person, and I give FoxAffliction a lot of credit, how they tried to piece together the betrayal, and how piece in a 12 narrative part, and try to make sense of it. Um, but I only gave a bit of a minute and 50-second response in the sixth part because I was running out of time here on the Kindle. Well, not time, but space here on the Kindle, so I only gave about a minute and 50-second response. So I thought I'd kind of do a little bit more here, more of a detailed, hopefully not too long response. But anyway, getting on to a topic here. I look at this as well from uh, two sides, if you will. Basically, I look at this from two. I look at this from two uh, theoretical, theoretical, theo, the, theor, theoretical sides. Excuse me. And the way I look at it from one side, um, I think whether you like him or not, you got to possibly look at it from maybe Ian's point of view. You see, with any new writer that comes in, or is appointed to be the head writer of a comic or a television show or whatever, they're always going to want to take that show and certain characters in another direction. They're going to want to put their own stamp on that show. They want to put their own handprint on that show, if you will, their own stamp, their own distinction, their own sign on that show. They basically want to make it their show or their book, if you will. And I think that's what Ian was looking at. He saw certain characters in areas that needed to be revitalized, reborn, maybe shelved indefinitely, buried, whatever you want to call it. And Fiona was one of the characters he looked at possibly as a character that could be reborn and revitalized and given some purpose, some potential. But he also looked at something that really maybe he felt didn't make sense and that he could possibly use towards that revitalization of the character, that rebirth of the character. And what he saw from maybe a fan's perspective, because remember, he used to be a fan himself, from a fan's perspective, he probably saw that her coming out of the blue and joining up with the freedom fighters really didn't make any sense to him. It's like, possibly to him, it's like, where did this come from? When did she suddenly become a good girl? The last time I saw her, she was sort of the anti-hero. She was a bounty hunter. She was a treasure hunter. She was hanging out with Knack the Weasel's sister, Nick. So, so to him, it's like, where did this suddenly all come from? And I think that's what he looked at, and that's why he felt she would be one of the perfect candidates, if you will, to have sort of a rebirth, a reboot, a retcon, if you will, even if it's in the middle of a continuous story arc. He decided to give it to her because, again, perhaps from his point of view, it just didn't make any sense as to why all of a sudden she's now with the freedom fighters. it just didn't make any sense to him. So, that's one theory to look at. Another part of that theory as well, when you look at it, is maybe he also wanted to have some kind of a female antagonist, main female antagonist, anti-hero, whatever, that Sally and Bunny and Julie Sue and Amy could fight against, instead of it mostly always being a robot or a male fighter or male opposition. Maybe he felt that, hey, we got to equal it out the gender. Let's give them. Let's take Fiona, give her this retcon, even though because even fans that saw this retcon happen even felt it didn't make sense itself. Just like FoxAffliction and TA, who helped provide the journal for people to read, basically how they felt. It didn't make sense, but yet I think Ian Flynn felt that that was best suited for her, and maybe that's why he did it. Maybe he felt, like I said, he just didn't see what sense it made for her to be part of the Freedom Fighters. It's like all of a sudden, boom, she's a freedom fighter now? When did this happen? if you take a look at detail and you read the book, when Sonic comes back from space, instead of like a week or so passing, a whole year has passed on Mobius. So in a whole year, she could have joined, and she could have maybe been trained and recruited and whatever. And yet, even though a fan like me can look at that detail and say, well, Ian, there's your reasoning, there's your behind-the-scenes deal, there's how she became a freedom fighter, what sense does it not make to you? Get what I'm saying? She even says in 153 that she decided to dedicate her life to helping people after she saw that Sonic had done what he did to save the planet, and knew that he couldn't be the kind of person that would leave her on purpose imprisoned. But yet again, like I said, you have Ian Flynn here, who's a new writer, wants to put his stamp on things and saying, hey, I'm the new guy here, I'm the one that runs the show now. Here you have somebody that looks at all these different elements and characters in the book, feels that some of them need a change, a revitalization, a rebirth, some need to get rid of, some characters and things you need to get rid of. And like I said, he probably looked at Fiona Fox and said, here's a character that, to me, has no business being a freedom fighter, because when did this happen? How did this happen? She's more suited to be what she was before, and that's sort of like an anti-hero, a bounty hunter, a treasure hunter, whatever. And also maybe he saw a void that was left opened with the fact that there was no real female antagonist or opposition for Sally and Amy and Bunny to fight against, besides maybe the anti-Mobius counterparts, which never really happened all that much. So maybe that's how he also looked at Fiona. He looked at it from his side of things, and this is just like, say, one theory, that one, here's a character that to him didn't make any sense, that just out of the blue became a freedom fighter, and it didn't make any sense to him. And he also saw potential to, say, fill that gap, that void of not having a female opposition, antagonist, anti-hero for the heroes like Sally, Amy, Rouge. Well, Rouge is sort of anti-hero, but at times is a hero. Blaze, Bunny, you name it, to fight against. So that's one way of looking at it. That's one theory of looking at it, in my opinion. Another theory of looking at it, in my opinion, is perhaps there was a miscommunication. And what that miscommunication was is the fact that that there was no, notes passed along. Like, maybe basically, to me, one theory that I look at is that, like I said, there was a miscommunication. Like, there was no, real talk between Penders and Flynn. Like, there was no notes left behind by Ken Penders to say, hey, look, this is what I have inked out. Please go in this direction. Please respect my wishes, even though I'm going off on my own to do my own thing. There wasn't, and there wasn't, again, there was no communication on both ends. So, to me, because, and this, again, this is the second theory on my part that I see, that because there was no communication, there was no, talking, there was no notes passed, and, basically, suggestions given to, hey, keep the character like this, or keep this way, or keep this that way. There was a mass fallout of communication that basically caused maybe Ian Flynn not to realize, hey, Fiona is meant to stay good, she's meant to be a freedom fighter, and we should keep her that way. There was no communication to him to let him know that. Between him or Penders or anybody else that worked with Penders, there was no communication overall. And especially when you look at the footnotes, as FoxAffliction and TA pointed out, the footnotes were definitely proof of a miscommunication, because you have Ian Flynn referring to Sally's slap to Sonic, the infamous slap, if you will, to Sonic, as being in 132 when it was actually in 134. And then you have another reference to something happening in 165 when it happened in an issue two issues later or so. And again, if that's not proof of a miscommunication between both sides, I don't know what is. And again, this proves exactly what FoxAffliction and TA were pointing out, that the betrayal by Fiona just didn't really add up. The narrative did not add up whatsoever. There was no real rhyme or reason behind it. It's like, here's somebody that you bring in trying to redeem herself and be a good girl now and be a help to people and sort of be on that division of the freedom fighters that's a medical division and / fighter division, if need be. Here she is, and all of a sudden you do a complete 360, 180 with her, and now she's just about, oh, I want to be with the bad boys because they're cool. And it just doesn't make any sense to anybody. So, so that's the way I look at it. That I do agree that no matter how you look, how you look at it, of how it came about, whether it was Ian wanting to put his own stamp on the book and saying, hey, I'm here now, this is my book, this is how things are going to go, or it was just a mass miscommunication between both sides and overall everybody at Archie. Again, the narrative of her becoming a bad girl, and her betrayal, just doesn't make any sense, because in 153 she says one thing, 19 issues later she says another. And even Ian Flynn and Tracy Yardlin, who worked on the book, penned a story where Fiona's like, hey, look, don't believe anything Scourge is saying. And they even have a panel of her looking at Scourge like, I hate your freaking guts. Or I'm annoyed that you're here and I hate your freaking guts. Or I don't like you, kind of deal. It's like, what happened? So that's just my thoughts on it. And, that's just my overall thoughts on it, my conclusion, my overall look at it from two sides myself. So my two theories, in my opinion, of why the betrayal happened. So I give credit to FoxAffliction and TA for doing what they did to try to figure it out. And that's all I'm going to say. I'll provide a link to the journal again so you guys can check it out yourselves. And I'll talk to you all later. Comment below if you agree or not with what I said.